Apple just dropped two Mac Studios, but which one should you buy? The M3 Ultra or the M3 Max? If you get this wrong, you could waste thousands of dollars on features you don't need. Let's dig into it. We are going to dive deep into the Mac Studio. So I've got it here in front of me, and we're going to run through this. I am an iPhone app developer. I have worked for Apple, Microsoft, and GoPro, and I want to break down this new computer because I found it very confusing having an older generation get the Ultra and then a newer generation just be a Max. So this was super confusing. And the RAM is also a confusing thing. So we're going to discuss those things today so that you have a better understanding of what's really important and so that you understand the performance considerations if you want to run local LLMs for AI on your machine. Just getting 512 gigabytes of RAM might be maybe a $4,000 mistake. So let's dig into that because the performance of these LLMs is also a big factor. It's not just being able to check a box and say, yes, I can run it. It's, does it actually work? Is it useful? And we're going to dig into that in this video. All right. So if you're not already subscribed, hit the like button, subscribe, and I will have more videos on technical topics related to programming in Swift and Xcode. And I do a lot of video work. And so I'm very interested in this machine. I had the 2013 trash can Mac. I loved it because it was quiet. And that is the one thing I kind of want in the Mac Studio. So if you're looking for a quiet machine that's not always going to turn its fan on as you're doing heavy workloads, then the Mac Studio might be the machine that you want. And I'm also not your typical consumer. So if you like nice things and you want the best thing, then you're going to want to watch this video. If you just want to get the cheapest Mac, then go for the Mac Mini. You don't need this. But if you're looking for something that's going to solve your needs as a video editor, as a programmer, or getting into some AI workflows, then I think the Mac Studio is a really good option. We just need to make sure that you get the right configuration and don't waste $4,000. Okay, so let's dive in. So this is the new Mac Studio. To be honest, the Apple Intelligence feature that they're toting, I despise. I turned it off. I don't use it. It's not good. That's just my takeaway. I've tried to use it. I've tried to make it work. The people who implemented it at Apple don't actually write. They don't actually use it. It's clunky. I want a writing companion that I don't have to keep opening up and closing and opening up and closing and opening up and closing. So I don't think Apple Intelligence right now is the way. And let's talk about M4 and M3 Ultra. M4 Max and M3 Ultra, because this was a really confusing, mind-blowing thing that I had to wrap my head around this week. And I literally could not go to sleep the other night because I was just digging into why. And so that's what we're going to get into. So Apple talks about choosing your own superpower. We've got these two different processor chips. Now, the M4 Max is what is in the latest MacBook Pros. I believe it's the same chip. I'm not 100% certain that there's not a special configuration here. And if that's the case, you can get this same performance in a Mac. Now, the benefit with a machine like the Mac Studio is you get the thermal headroom to do advanced workflows without spinning up the fan. So you get better cooling than you would in a laptop. You also don't have the battery generating heat. So that's another thing to think about with this Mac. Now, the M4 Max has a lower bandwidth. And if you're going to be doing any kind of AI workflow, this might actually be a limitation on the machine. And so you might want to lean towards the 819 gigabytes memory bandwidth. Now, keep in mind, this is fast for a Mac, but when we're talking about GPUs that are running LLMs, if you're doing a 4090, 5090, or even some of these special cards that run in data centers like the H100s, the A100s, those have like 3,000 to 5,000 gigabytes. And that's significantly faster, and they're distributed so they can run queries faster. So we'll be able to get decent bandwidth, but this isn't a killer AI machine. And so that's something I want you to keep in mind as we're looking. Now, I'm not sure if anything else is taking advantage of the neural engine other than Apple's own algorithm. And if you're not using Apple Intelligence like me, I've turned most of the features off because I find it distracting. I've turned off summarization. It's not worth it to me to not see the original message. I'm not that impatient. I can read, and I appreciate that more. So now I have an M3 Max. So I kind of know what the performance is of an M3 Max, which is basically half of the M3 Ultra. Now, the one thing that potentially is different, or there's actually two things here, maybe more, is that you can get more RAM, a significant amount of RAM at significant cost, and you also get more bandwidth. So I believe the M3 is closer to this. The M3 Max is closer to this for memory. Might be less. So I'll get a boost no matter what to something a little bit more with the Ultra. So that's a big plus of making this decision. Now the thing to keep in mind is that your CPU and GPU cores might be faster, and actually I think are faster. So now you've got this tension here that Apple kind of made really confusing by going with M3 Ultra. And they said that not every generation of Apple Silicon is going to have an Ultra. So we might not ever get an M4 Ultra, which means it would be an M5 Ultra or an M6 Ultra. And they're just going to take more time at getting these high performance CPUs and GPUs, the unified chip, out the door. And so that's why we're going to have longer refresh cycles on something like the Mac Studio. So that's the big takeaway. If you want a ton of memory, your only option is to go Ultra. But I would say if you're doing LLMs and you're just trying to run the biggest models, your performance with an LLM is going to be very slow on a Mac Studio. And your tokens per second, which is how we measure performance, is probably going to be like 1 to 5, maybe 6 tokens a second, which is slow. And I think you need to understand what that looks like. So let's take a look at what does half the compute performance look like with a 32 32 billion parameter DeepSeek R1. So I'm going to paste in a message here. Let's grab this and see if this is good. All right, so we've got this message. You are a Swift iOS engineer. Create a weather app with Open Weather app. I wrote the wrong thing here. For iOS. So we got a typo. That's good enough. We're just going to do it. It's going to figure it out. And it's going to start. So let's see. Okay, so it figured out that I typed the wrong thing. And you can see this is like, I don't know. I feel like this is 5 to 6 tokens per second. A token's not exactly a word. And I think it's like 3/4 of a word. So you're going to see that it's going to be doing this thinking thing. And it's going to do this for a while. While it's thinking, let's go over back here. And I've got another tab open. And we're going to paste that same exact thing. I'm not going to correct the mistake because we're going to just do this as a comparison. Now here, I am doing this. Zoom in. I am doing this in O3 Mini High. All right, so that's not working. Okay, so I'm going to do this in O3 Mini High. We're going to hit OK and see what it thinks and what it does. And I think this will give you perspective on the performance of the Mac Studio when it comes to running LLMs locally. Yes, you can have some privacy, but is it effective? You be the judge. So this is thinking. And there we go. off to the races. It is spitting out code super fast. I don't even know if I can scroll. It'll keep scrolling me back up. It is done. So this one's done. We got a chunk of code here that we can test out. And then if we go, whoops, didn't want to do that. If we go back here, wrong window, we can see it's still writing code. So, and last time I did this with the AI, the code it wrote was not compilable. Sometimes I have compiler issues, but like working with smaller models means that it's going to be less accurate. It's going to be more likely to make mistakes. And even this 32 billion parameter thing is super slow. So I can't imagine waiting this long. Now, if you've never had an LLM, this might feel fast. But once you get a taste of how fast ChatGPT is, then we can ask it to do, okay, check the code for errors and Swift best practices. We can make it check its own work. If I were to do that over here, we'd see it start thinking. And it's just, this feels like it's 2 to 3 tokens per. It feels half as fast on this thinking stage. And if I jump back over, we can see this is already done. So it's gone through, it's figured out if it needed to make any changes, and it gives us some improvements on the query. Okay, so that is a look at just one workflow that I think is really important to check out. Let's get back to this because I think there's some decisions that you can make knowing this knowledge of the performance. And yeah, I don't think we need to dig in any more here. So if we go to the pre-order, we're going to just run through what you get here and your option. So it's available for pre-order right now, and it'll be shipping or available on the 12th. So you can get it in the door pretty quickly. So this is the M4 Max over on the left. This bigger. And then this is the Ultra on the right. Now, right out of the gate, the thing that's going to be important to you to understand is these USB ports. If you want standard USB ports, get the M4 Max. Those are going to be limited to 10 gigabytes a second bandwidth on the front. If you want to have additional Thunderbolt controllers, you need the Ultra in order to get enough Thunderbolt controllers to provide Thunderbolt to the front of the Mac. And so this will give you 6 Thunderbolt 5 ports. So you'll get 120 gigabytes a second or gigabits a second performance on that. And I think that's a big, big thing. So if you want to plug in SSDs on the front rather than on the back, you're going to want the faster one, which means you need the Ultra. And that's kind of my takeaway. Now, the starting memory is also confusing because this one starts at 36 gigabytes and this one actually starts at 96 gigabytes. This threw me for a loop because I was like, I just want the 128. Well, you can't get the 128 in both. Only the M4 Max goes to 128. So it creates some weird tensions on choosing what you want. And the other big thing is you can support 8 displays. I have 4 displays. One of them is over USB using DisplayLink. And the one is internal on my MacBook Pro. And the other one, this one is still going. This is so slow. Did it find errors? So it is fixing it, and my fan is spinning in my computer over here. So that's just telling you something that like this is a slow workflow. Okay, let's jump back over here. 8 displays is a lot. Now, if you're doing like interactive displays for like an exhibit, like this could be the machine that you need in order to do an exhibit like. So going on, you're going to see that you're jumping up $2,000 just to get this basically a second processor and more memory, more storage, and Thunderbolt. So like you're getting a lot for $2,000, things that you can't just buy separately. If you want 2 CPUs in one as an Ultra, this is the machine that you need. And this is the one that I want to get after doing the research, but we have to customize it. So let's hit the select button and let's talk about the options once we. So we have a lot of options to choose between. Now, I want to double the performance of my Mac. And in order to do that, I have a 40-core GPU and I have the 16-core CPU and the 16-core neural engine. So by selecting this one, I'm doubling my performance. That's the one I want. That's another $1,500. Okay, so not cheap, but the whole point is to get more rendering performance and compiling performance and everything performance. I want something that's silent, and so that's a big factor. Now, here is where it gets a little bit tricky. So I want the 80-core GPU because it's going to give me the best rendering, best everything. Now I have to make a decision between the memory. And the memory is where it's a little bit tricky because, you could be like, let me spend $4,000 and now I can run my own local LLMs and they'll be slow. Okay? Versus you go for something like this that allows you to load a 32 billion parameter LLM or a 70 billion parameter LLM and get some performance. It's not going to be great. It's not going to be open AI. It's not going to be Grok. It's not going to be Gemini Flash 2. But you can run some of those. Going anything higher, you're down to like 1 to 2 tokens a second or less for these huge models, only because the memory bandwidth isn't there. When we look at a 5090 or some of these H100 AI accelerator chips that NVIDIA has, they have 3 to 4 or 5 times the memory bandwidth that Apple's memory has. So they're faster, which is really important when we're doing LLM. So while you can load it, it's not going to be fast. You're still better off performance-wise if you're doing tasks that require fast responses to just pay for ChatGPT and have it spit out stuff. You can do the Plus, you can do the Pro. I'm doing the Pro right now because I kept running out of limits and I wanted access to the latest models. So for me, it makes sense. It might not make sense for you right now, but if it starts going into your workflow, I think 96 gigabytes, like I would have gone for 128 gigabytes. That's not an option. $1,600 for 256 RAM. I don't know if I have any other workflows that are going to do this. And if I can load a 70 billion parameter, and that's only going to probably be 50 gigabytes, that'll fit in memory here. Anything else is like I can tech box and say, yeah, I can load the biggest LLM, but the performance is going to be crap. So that's where I think 96 gigabytes makes sense. And then the next thing is storage. Now, what no one tells you is that there's trade-offs on going cheap on storage. There's trade-offs on going for a lower storage and then changing it later. You have to buy the storage later, and maybe you can get it for under $1,000 and you can get 8 terabytes or 4 terabytes. Is it going to work as well as Apple's? I don't know. I trust Apple to integrate everything, and so that's kind of where I lean in this storage wars. I have another video on how to install macOS on an external. And a lot of people who are doing that picked a Mac with too little storage, and now 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 years later, they're trying to find an option to work for them. Now, this one should have replaceable memory banks, but we haven't seen the internals yet, so I don't know for sure. The minimum I will ever get is 2 terabytes, but I do a lot of video work in addition to coding and now LLM stuff. I am running out of space. I have 100 gigabytes free, and having to manage storage is the worst thing in the world when you're just trying to create content, or when you're trying to record things. It's so annoying having to move things around. I don't want to manage memory. So for me, 4 terabytes is probably the future. maybe 8 terabytes, depending on the size of the video projects that I start working. As I've gotten more professional equipment, it balloons the size of the projects that I work on. And so having a large amount of storage makes it so I don't have to think when I want to go to record, I can just record. So that's kind of my take on this. I don't think I would do the 8 terabyte just yet, but I would probably go towards 4 terabytes. And if you're just getting started, I think 2 terabytes. It depends on if you're doing video workflows. Like video workflows, you need at least 2 terabytes or 4 terabytes. I wouldn't do anything aftermarket, but that's just me. I'm someone who likes quality. I like it to work out of the box. I want the all-in-one solution from Apple. So that is what we're looking at. So we're approaching $7,000 for this Mac, and I think this is going to be the better option. So if we add this to bag, the tax is going to look. Now I already have a bunch of these in the bag. Can this let me review the bag? Oh, is the date slipping? The date is slipping. So I can't get this anymore on Wednesday, because the Friday at the earliest. So it's gonna be a lot. So this would be top of the line. That's not worth it in my opinion. Um, you have to know that you need the RAM for whatever use case is. LLMs are not going to be that. Oh, this one I forgot to upgrade. So for me, I want to double the performance. I want more RAM. I've got 64 now. I want more hard drive space, and I want an all-in-one solution. Doing an external SSD adds noise. So my microphone up here, this picks up a lot of noise. So keeping it quiet in my recording studio helps a lot for that. I want those ports on the front to be Thunderbolt. I don't want them to be USB, which means I need the M3 Ultra. It's the only one that works. It's a frustrating trade-off, but like that's the one. Get the Apple Care, and we're looking at $7,201 to get this. So just to review it and see how it compares to see if the performance is significantly better. And I am looking for something quiet. I might not keep it, but I think it would give me a good idea of the performance I could expect if I wanted to go down this. I've had the trash can Mac before. I really liked it. I like having a laptop, but I also kind of like having a maybe one Mac just for video editing, and that way I can have it like always set up in the proper configuration, and I don't have to worry about closing windows and like managing all of that. So I think that could be a benefit, and we'll see. So I hope that this helps you make a decision between the different Macs that are available. I know it was really confusing when I was looking at it, but just like feeling the performance of the local LLMs, this is not a selling factor to get large amounts of RAM, because even with the smaller models, they don't run very fast compared to paying for something like ChatGPT. So if you pay for ChatGPT or Grok, those are way faster and the experience is a lot better. I hope this helps. If you learned something, hit the like button, and I will see you in the next video. probably about Swift coding and AI.